FlatsClass fans, Captain CA here, and I want to talk about leveraging these negative tides with Mirrolures to catch more fish, draw more vicious strikes. I know a lot of you guys are soft bait fans, but this time of year, the hard baits can really, really deliver some quality strikes and quality fish. All right. Before we get into that, or I send you to the video, because I'm going to go in here, maybe even grab a jacket because it's pretty chilly this morning. I'm going to grab some tackle. We're going to meet out there in the boat barn and talk about the tackle that we use. But before I send you to a cool place like the one you're about to go to, I want to remind you to subscribe to this channel, like it, share it, comment. We want to take you to more cool places like the one you're going to right now. Almost 67 degrees back here in the very back. See how cold it is out front. All right, so today just sat down, came out to this kind of little drop off. There's a huge flat out here in front of me that's inundated with sandy potholes. It's very shallow. You can see a bird waiting here on the bank. Probably the deepest pothole you got out there is 2.5 feet deep. You can hear the airboats burning around in the back there. But these fish will have to fall off this flat, and I'm sitting in about 2.5 to 3 feet of water. And I'm just going to use my power pole move here and put it on anchor mode, and I'm going to cast as these fish come off this edge and see if I can't catch a couple of the reds that are back here in the back. Typically on this tide, a day or two before the front, I have a lot of success. So I'm going to give it a try, and I'll try to talk over all that airboat noise. The beauty of this bait really is the fact that it lets me cover so much water. The rod's the perfect length to get long casts with, and the bait provides me enough flash that even at a slow speed, I can attract fish from a distance. You know, you'll see me pump it like 2 or 3 times real quick, and then I'll let it just sit there and hold and not do anything and float back to the surface. That slow float is what triggers generally the trout bite. But I've caught my share of redfish and snook doing this time of year. And this time of year is right here at the holiday season between Christmas and New Year's. We got a really slow outgoing tide today. It's not the best tide. Definitely not the best tide. And there's plenty of traffic on the water, but when you get a negative tide, it'll keep a lot of people off the water. So they're only going to be out here for a little while. I'm going to stay as long as I can. See if we can't talk a few fish into it. We're tight. Just turned the camera back on and we're tight. Come on, quit digging, buddy. Quit digging, buddy. Small redfish. Poor timing with that airboat. They're kind of the jet skis of the marsh here on the Nature Coast, unfortunately. Very noisy. Spook a lot of fish. Nice. So I was searching. We're about a day before the front starts to get here, where we're going to have rain tomorrow. But we got the overcast and we got the wind. And I had a water temperature in the canal at about, I'm going to say 66, 67 degrees. And man, look at this nice healthy redfish. Now, this is one of those things I talked about in a previous episode of FlatsClass YouTube. where we're using these 27 MRs and we've altered them with the BKK hooks. It allows this bait to float on the surface, and then you can just dip and dive it kind of like a 7M. Let's get this guy back in the drink here. There he goes. We'll pulse this bait in here. Maybe you can see the little subtle flashing. See how it floats and then it dives down, comes right back to the surface, just like that, backs out of the water, comes right back. That slow float, that's what gets them. That is what trips their trigger. You can kick this bait out there about 125 feet on every cast, so you can cover some zone in a hurry. In a big hurry. This time of year it can be a little bit better than working a topwater. I could work a topwater today and probably do okay. I'm just not seeing a lot of bait on the surface that makes me feel good about throwing topwater. If I saw more, I would. This just looks like kind of a finger mullet look. Shad look in here. Might be a little too much water on the flat. I may have to ease up with the move and get up there so I can throw in some of that salt and pepper up inside, maybe get a bigger fish. I think I'll make a move, literally. Let's do that. Bait just does such a good job of running about 6 inches, maybe 8 inches under the surface. Perfect. Fishing these shallow zones. Still a big enough bait to draw a big strike without being fouled a lot. And I can work it pretty slow. We're working a little shallower here to the right. There's a little bit of a ridge, so I'm keeping my rod tip up a little bit so it doesn't dip quite as deep. These hooks are so sharp. The trebs on this bait that I replaced the factory ones are the BKK. These are the BKK 71-SS, which stands for Super Slide, but they're in the Spear series. So really solid hooks for replacing on the 27 MRs. I've had a lot of success, especially for this style of fishing this time of year. I found that I was smoking a few out, so I decided to come back out where it's about 3 feet again, 2.5 to 3 feet, and see if they didn't settle out here, because a little tougher to catch them up there in a foot of water. I don't know why they're so edgy, but they are. A lot of people moving around this week just due to the fact that it's a holiday week. These plugs are perfect for fishing these winter tides where you have a lot lower water and you need a bait that will move over the skinny stuff. Really is an alternative to just throwing plastics. You know, these have a subtle rattle in them, and then they have all that flash, and on a dark day like this, that's a big plus. Calling fish from a good 10 or 15 foot radius. I'm working in a bunch of finger mullet in here, just trying to get one of them big fish that might be in these little pockets to chew. You can see how I twitch and throw the tip back. See how I create slack? Twitch, 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 throw the tip back, and that lets that bait dart, 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 and then float back up. It's important. Paying attention. And then I watch that line intently, because if that line gets tight all of a sudden, it's like I've got to come quick to it. But those BKK hooks are so damn sticky. Yeah, we hung into something now. Something with a tail. Oh yeah. Oh, come on, buddy. What do we got? Probably another red. This plug here. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely gonna be another redfish. Big one here. Much bigger one. Look what happens when you throw these big plugs. You get some quality fish. I'm trying to be careful. Hooks are strong, but no sense in rushing them. No sense in rushing them. Stay away from my trolling motor, buddy. Oh, come on, come on, come on. Oh yeah, that's probably oversized there. Probably an oversized red. Good one there. Real good one. Real good one. Let's get this baby in here. Whew. Open my bail a little bit here, or my thumb bar I should say. Let's see if I can. Look at that. That is a beaut. That is a beaut. Those are some sharp hooks. Some sharp hooks. Let me see if I can undo him real fast. And a tougher one by myself here. All right, well, hopefully you're enjoying the video today. I thought it was a really interesting spin on fishing negative tides, because many times when you find yourself on those negative tide windows, you don't have the bluebird skies. You often have these overcast skies, and it makes it difficult to sight fish with plastics or maybe bugs jigs or something like that. So it's nice to have a search bait other than a topwater, which is going to require a really aggressive fish, and maybe fish something a lot slower, like going directly to one of the Mirrolure lineup. That product line just has a lot of different sizes in it, and I'm not saying the 27 MR, the way I modified it, is the best way to fish the negative tides, because there's lots of instances where I'm fishing a little bit more current on a better moon, or there's a little bit more wind and I'm fishing faster water where I'm going to want something heavier, and I might go to a 28 MR, or maybe something smaller like an 18 MR if the bait in the water is smaller. Or maybe I even do something like old school and go to a classic like a 51 MR. So there's a lot of choices that you can really kind of bounce around in your head to fish during negative tides, because you're not fishing the banks, you're not fishing the edges. But in this case, I was kind of fishing the edges. I wasn't up on the flat per se, but what I was fishing was that little rolled edge where you have these little finger cuts that come off the flat, and they allow you to work something like a bait like this that floats over that stuff, so I can throw well up on top of it and work it to that edge. And all the strikes really came within 10 feet of that edge. Just as soon as it came off that edge, it's like they're sitting there and they see it come off the edge and they see the flash and they rush up and get it. So some pretty cool action on it. This is one of my favorite techniques this time of year. And the only thing I can think of that even rivals this is throwing Paul Brown lures, honestly. It's just not all about the bait. Now, I talked about the modification, and if you haven't seen the modification, go check out a video I did about a week or so ago. We'll put the link in here on how to make the 27 MR even better. So there'll be a link in there about these hooks, these BKK hooks. I talked a little bit about them in the deal. But let's talk a little bit about the rod. This rod is a, whoop, you don't catch that. This is one of the Fitzgerald setups that I really like, and this is the 7'3" medium. It's in the all-purpose lineup. It's one of those setups for me that works extremely well for treble hook baits. Got a really parabolic tip, but it's got that length where I can really zing it out there. And because I was fishing into the wind many times, because it's important to fish with the current, and today the current and the wind happen to be in the same direction, to mitigate backlashes. Yes, we all get backlashes. I will use 30-pound braid rather than dropping back down to 20, where I'm on a clear day I might use 20 to make a long cast and to minimize the shadow on the water. In this case, this is Diamond 30, very limp line. Diamond braid, they make a really high quality 8-carrier braid, and it makes casting so much more, well, effortless for me. The leader I'm using is, I've got about 4 foot in this case, and I'm getting this tangled up in all this line over here, but I got about 4 foot of leader here. 3 feet of it is 20-pound fluorocarbon with a modified Albright to my diamond braid. And then at the very end, I've got 8 to 12 inches of 30-pound fluorocarbon. And I like to have that little bit heavier tippet just because of the opportunity to catch a snook. I live here in West Central Florida, and there are many times we tangle with snook this time of year before it really gets cold. As you saw, the water temps were in the mid-60s. So by doing so, I just take a little no-name knot and I tie it right like that, and I add a little bit of bite tippet to the plug, and it works fantastic. Now let me set this down, and I want to share one more thing with you. I don't want you to underestimate the power of tossing those hard baits this time of year. Like I said in the intro, so many of us get wrapped up in only throwing jerk shads and paddle tails all the time. This is the one time of year when you hit late fall, all through the winter months, and then moving into the early spring, when you can really make baits like Mirrolures. Doesn't have to be a Mirrolure. If you will take hard baits and really work them, you can generate some amazing action. Now on this particular day, I don't want to give it away because you're about to go back to the action here in a second, but one thing I will tell you, any of the products that you saw here, and yes, I am a paid professional angler, so I do have brands that pay me. Any of the ones that I mentioned, you can go to sodiumusa.com and you can purchase them there. They're my go-to tackle affiliate for YouTube and for FlatsClass television, and I just want to share that with all of you guys so that when you see something you're like, hey, I'd like to try that, you can go directly there, whether it be the BKK hooks, the Fitzgerald rods, the diamond braid, the Mirrolures. That happens to be a custom color mangrove honey. You can get them all right there. Now go back to the water and enjoy the rest of the show. I used to carry a pair of split ring pliers with you, and it wasn't that the fish bent these out. I bent this front hook out because I wanted to get it out of the fish in a hurry, so it was my own undoing there, damaging the hook, but I just wanted to make sure that fish was going to get back in the water pretty quickly. But I do like having quality hooks, so now I'm good as new. That fast. Pays to be prepared, really does. You'll also notice that I don't have a loop knot here. See how that line sticks out? That keeps that front treble from wanting to catch that leader. And the way I still give my bait plenty of action is I twitch the bait, throw the tip back, twitch the bait, throw the tip back. And being that this Fitzgerald rod, ooh, these are some sticky hooks, is so forgiving, it has a good parabolic bend. Give you an idea here. You can see, oh, I don't want to wrap my tip, but you can see how deep it bends in the blank out there. That makes a huge difference in being able to keep these fish on. Let's get back to it. I'm going to catch some more of these guys. I think we've all had to fish at one point or another these negative tides, and a lot of you get discouraged fishing extremely low water because you like to throw up along the mangroves, but the negative tides for me have always been one of the best times to fish. It's why I like this time of year now. You might want to throw a paddle tail or a jerk shad or something like that on these lower water scenarios, but it is amazing if you throw a hard bait and you understand how you have to manipulate it, how successful you can be catching these fish. It's crazy. I've caught some of my best trout and some hero-sized redfish fishing these low tide zones in these neck downs, and it just works out for me almost every time I see a negative tide come up in the calendar. I want to fish it. I want to take advantage of it. So let's fish a couple of these little minor points along this creek. I can see some current seams and see if we can't pull a big trout. Pretty cool to see that little blue heron up there on the bank working just like I am. Just another angler. I was throwing these same style baits on a television show that we just shot down in the Florida Keys, Everglades National Park. We were fishing some really low water because the wind had blown the water out, and we were fishing big giant potholes, you know, bowls that were within the grass flat, and we were throwing this same setup, mostly the gringo color or the bleach blonde color, all white. And it was just fun to watch how the snook reacted to this bait, because naturally it was much warmer down there even though it felt cold. It seems like you can take the same style and come right here and fish these dried out creeks and do just as well, because I mean there's a ton of rock up in here, and on the high water these fish will get up there and sun on that rock on the sunny banks. Today we don't have that much sun. In fact, we have none now. But they don't wander far from that rock. So they just slide off into this depth here. And if I can tease them, the aggressive ones, with this plug, you can get a decent catch every once in a while. Little surprised I haven't caught a nice trout yet. Just reds. We'll see. Still got some good spots coming up. Blues protecting their neighborhood there. Oh, what do I got right here? Oh, do you know you're hooked? Do you know you're hooked? Oh, a nice trout. A really nice trout. Oh. Put myself anchor mode here. That's where this forgiving rod really comes in handy here. spongy tip on this rod. Oh, and I've got him hooked just in the back. This is gonna be tricky. It's a good trout. This is where they could come out. See if I can get him in the boat. Oh, nice trout. Oh, gotta be careful. Sticky hooks, boy, they catch fish. This fish is gonna tape out at 19 inches long. 19-inch long trout. Nice fish. In he goes. Whew. Might hang here for a second, see if we can't pull another one of those. Sharp hooks paid off that time. Looking at my tide chart on my phone right now, we're getting right to the very bottom of this tide. So I don't have, you know, much more water movement. I'm trying to stay in the narrowest parts of the zone where the water will continue to move, because once I reach this bottom, and you'll see right in here, once I reach this bottom, there's going to be no point in me fishing for quite some time, because I'm just not going to have much water movement. So I've been fishing it since about 9 o'clock. So if I go back this way, I started fishing it when it was right up at the top here. So I got the best part of that fall, and I'm almost at the very bottom. So I'm gonna fish this for about another 30 minutes, and then we're gonna call it good. But let's bang around here on this little edge here. There's a lot of mullet moving in here. You know, when you look at this scenario I got here, I've got a channel, you know, coming through here, and I've got all these mullet working this channel. And it's just, I mean, when I tell you it's only less than a foot on either side of these flats, that's all it is. And the way things are working out, I would bet the fish are right here where all this activity, where all this mullet activity is. So I'm gonna just work this and see if I can't pull a red like right out of the channel. And a channel where I'm fishing is really only about 2.5 feet deep. It's not the type of channel that you might be thinking of where there's like 6 or 7 feet of water. There's a few holes in here, but for the most part, the channel here is about twice as deep as the edges. That's about it. Enough for a lower unit to run through, and that's all you got. Another trout. I've caught a couple of trout off camera that were real small. This one doesn't look like he's much better. Just shows how much action there is. It's kind of crazy. There was about 3 mullet that followed this guy in like they were going to do something. And it's not a bad trout, just not as big as I'd like, but not a bad trout. All right, let me get rid of him, and we're going to move on to one more spot, and then we're going to break some stuff down. Well, not bad for 5 hours of grinding through that falling tide. Typically a tide here is 6 hours, but we're here at the bottom of it now, and I'm not seeing the activity with the birds, the mullet, just not seeing the pushes. And that front's almost here. It's getting pretty chilly. So anytime you find yourself in a negative tide situation and you feel like you've got to only throw weedless baits or throw soft baits, I'm telling you, if you slow walk a topwater, fish a modified Mirrolure 27 MR like I have today, the XL version. If you fish hard baits the right way, you're going to find out that these negative tides, especially if you can fish around the edges of creeks or channels in residential dock systems, for me, almost any zone where it concentrates fish, any of these basins out here, will hold fish. And they cannot, I mean, they cannot resist when you slow work a slow sink bait. It just, years ago, when we only had the classics that were like the 51 MR and the 52 MR, I would throw them into residential canals or into creek systems and let them kind of settle all the way down to the bottom. And then I would just gently lift them up off the bottom and let them shimmy again. And I can't tell you how many fish we used to catch. It was just ridiculous. Now that there's more people fishing and there's more technology that tunes people into where fish might be, albeit if they're using Google Earth or something like on the Ray Marine that's got Navionics Platinum Plus, they're going to be able to find these fish on these low tides. But this time of year, when it's negative low tides, it really concentrates them. And if you're willing to work that hard bait, like I said, you can really catch some pretty nice fish. Today I say we because I feel like I brought you on board with me, but I probably caught about a dozen fish, but we'll probably edit most of them out to 4 or 5 of them max, and just share with you the intel on the intro and in the tackle piece and everything on how we did it. But I'm fishing a zone right here on the Nature Coast between Ozello and the Homosassa River. And it's just a productive zone. When the weather starts to change, the fish will start moving further back in some of those spring-fed creeks and rivers. And that's all I'm doing. I'm fishing the zones that traditionally will hold redfish and speckled trout this time of year. And if you get lucky with a good warm-up, you even catch a snook every once in a while. That didn't happen today, but I think I'm going to head in. Ugh, I'm getting chilly.